And now, Focus on the Pines with your host, Jack Barnes.
Hi, I'm Jack Barnes, and welcome to Focus on the Pines, where we bring you news, views, and interesting people from in and around Ocean Pines. Who would think that one of the most noted and respected dog trainers in the country lived right here in Ocean Pines? His name is George Alston, and he's our guest today. George, welcome to Focus on the Pines.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Now, your accomplishments and stature in the dog handler's world are legendary, but before we speak to them, let's give our viewers a little insight into how a young farm boy from Vienna, Virginia, actually got started in this profession.
Well, my family started raising boxers to keep me from contact sports because I was blind in one eye from birth. And it just started from there, and it grew and it grew. And
now, I understand you were just 8 years old when you started working with dogs?
I was 8 years old when I showed my first dog.
That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. And I understand you actually got involved and had a championship at a very young age.
I won the international championship at Madison Square Garden for junior showmanship at the age of 14.
14 years old. That is something. And what you obviously got started. I guess your dad wanted to give you an opportunity to do something that maybe took away from having to get involved in sports because of your disability with your eye. You just stayed with dog handling and training?
Yeah, I worked summers for several boarding kennels and professional handlers, and after I graduated from high school, I went into an apprenticeship program, and I apprenticed for 12 years to learn my trade.
12 years in an apprenticeship program?
12 years, which is probably more time than most doctors spend. So.
And did you mention to me you actually gave up some scholarships in other areas to be able to do that?
Yes, I had 5 swimming scholarships to Yale, Cornell, Harvard, University of Pennsylvania, Indiana University, and I also had 2 merit scholarships to any school in the country.
And you gave them up?
I gave them up to be a professional dog handler.
Now, how'd your parents feel about that?
My father disowned me at that point.
But you really felt, you were driven, that this was something that you wanted to do. Somewhere down deep inside, you had this passion to work with dogs.
Absolutely.
Well, that's something. And then you, from what I understand, that you went on, you kind of moved around the country. You had several years in Connecticut, Massachusetts. You were moving around trying to, I guess you have to make a buck in this business, kind of hard in the early stages.
No, what it was is I went to work for different professional handlers who had expertise in different areas. I worked for a lady in Pennsylvania, was my first job, Lena Basquette, who was one of the Warner Brothers wives at one time. And but her specialty was Great Danes and working dogs. And then I went to work for a lady up in Connecticut, Jane Forsyth, and her expertise was sporting dogs and boxers and poodles. And then I went to work for another gentleman whose expertise was setters. And then I went to work for another gentleman whose expertise was hounds and sporting dogs also.
Did each one of these, when you were working for these people, George, does that mean you actually moved into the area where they were, or did you take their dogs to where you were?
No, what I did was I actually moved to where their place of business was, and rented an apartment, or some of them had facilities for their assistants on their property.
Where would you say was your first big break? Was it Chalfont, PA, where you were working with the Great Danes, where somebody gave you the opportunity to say, okay, we're going to take a chance on this guy?
Well, that would be the first one, would be Chalfont, because here I am, a 17-year-old kid coming out of high school, and for her to take a chance on me, even though I had a background in dogs and had a reputation for being a pretty good handler, showing my own dogs and whatever, they didn't know what my work ethic was. So yes, they do take a chance.
So we kind of owe her a little bit for taking that first chance on a 17-year-old, but she saw something.
Absolutely, and until the day she passed away, she referred to me as her son.
Is that right?
Yes.
Now you built up your reputation through showing, but then you got, I guess, a point in your 30s where you thought, I could have my own business, and you moved back into Maryland?
Well, I had an opportunity to lease a kennel in Pasadena, Maryland. And so I had just gotten married, so my wife and I moved into the kennel, moved into the property with a month's rent and $10. and we went
taking
out,
a chance there.
And we went out and blew the $10 on a couple of beers to celebrate. And we had only been married like 3 days or 4 days at that point. And then 3 years later, we were able to purchase the property.
So I take it, to get started, you're just not initially making that much money just showing dogs. You have to do grooming and boarding. Was that the idea at that point?
Well, at the time when you're working for handlers, you're being paid a salary for 36 hours a day, 9 days a week, and so you're not really making very much money when you're an assistant or an apprentice. But your learning is like going to school.
Now, you must have been quite good. I think you mentioned to me you never had a client that you didn't have for any less than about 8 years.
Well, on the day I retired from handling, I did not have a client. There was not one dog in there that was owned by a client that had been with us less than 8 years.
That's quite a tribute to your skills and reputation.
It's all on how you treat. It's all on how you treat your clients. And
now, I think you mentioned it takes you just don't go into a breed and become an expert just because you know how to do dog handling. It takes you a while to get to know the breed.
Well, as an example, you take a breed like an Irish setter, it may take you maybe 4 years, 5 years to learn how to trim and groom all the different types of coats that they may have. And then you have to learn the breed and all their idiosyncrasies so you can go in and you can hide the faults and bring out the good points. So it's not something that you're going to learn overnight, because you have to be exposed to all the different types of dogs and different types of coats. And that happens with every breed that you go in and handle. That's why I had to do 12 years.
Of apprenticeship.
Of apprenticeship, yes, sir.
Now, I also was surprised in speaking with you, George, that it can be quite grueling showing dogs. And when we look at, a lot of our viewers, probably like me, you look at Animal Planet and you see the dog show and you see somebody showing a dog and you think, that's it, they show a dog. But you said really to do well and financially to enable yourself to stay in the business, you just don't go in there and show one dog at a dog show.
No, there were times when I would show 35, 40 dogs a show.
That is unbelievable. What's the most you ever showed?
58.
58 dogs.
Yes.
That's just, I can see why it's grueling. Plus you said when you're showing dogs outside, the pace has picked up a bit from what we see. We see a lot of the inside shows on television.
Well, that is very true, and the rings are much bigger. You take a breed like an Irish setter, and you have to run full out like you would be running a sprint in track, because they go so fast at a trot. Same thing with German Shepherds or Afghan Hounds. There's a lot of breeds that just get up and go. So you have to be very physically fit. I would, on the average dog show day, I'd start to run at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't finish until 5, 6 o'clock at night.
That's tiring.
Then then you have to go and take care of your dogs and drive off to the next show, and you may not get to bed till 12, 1 o'clock.
Now, I know you've had tremendous accomplishments in showing dogs. Give our viewers an insight into some of the ones that you're most proud of, or had a lot of impact in your career.
Well, actually, I didn't win any of those shows.
You're going to tell me the dog did, right?
The dog did, that's right. I only received 2 awards for me. One was when I went Best Junior at Madison Square Garden, and another one was when I retired, the Irish Setter Club of America gave my wife and I an award for what we had done for the breed. Other than that, it's all the dog.
Well, then, tell our viewers some of the accomplishments of certain dogs that really made an impression.
Okay, I had an English Springer Spaniel that I showed that went best in show at Westchester in New York, not Westminster, Westchester Kennel Club. Went best in show at Detroit Kennel Club with another English Springer Spaniel. Went best in show at Philadelphia Kennel Club. Probably I've shown dogs to somewhere between 500 and 600 best in shows.
Now you had didn't you have a #1 hound too?
I had an English foxhound that went, that was taken out of a pack when he was 4.5 years old. It took me 9 months to train him. And
actually working in the field.
That's all he did, was hunt fox for a living. And so I purchased him for a client of mine, and it took me 9 months to train him, and we were able to make him #1 hound in the United States, and he won the group at Madison Square Garden.
That's quite an accomplishment for that dog.
That is correct. He was he was probably one of the greatest pure show dogs of any breed that ever lived. I showed him from 7 feet away, never laid a hand on him. Did everything on voice command or hand signals.
That is amazing. Now I have a couple. You mentioned Irish setters before. We have a photograph here that we want to show our viewers, and maybe you can explain a little bit about what here. You mentioned Irish setters before.
Okay, this
is you, I take it, in a little younger year.
Right, that's me in 1991. That was the day I retired from showing dogs. And it just so happened, it was brought to my attention that the Delaware County Kennel Club is where I won my first junior showmanship class when I was...
Is that right?
When I was 10 years old, yeah. So that was
full circle, we call that.
That was an accidental thing, but there was a member of the club there who had been there, and she reminded me about this. But this was the #1 Irish setter in the United States at the time. It's champion Cloverleaf's Rebecca, and she had multiple best in shows.
Now we noticed I was showing my ignorance earlier, and I was remarking, as was Mr. Reynolds, that the neck on the Irish setter here, it's unbelievable. And you said there's some tricks in handling to even elongate that neck. Tell our viewers about that.
Well, first of all, it's the angle that you turn the head can create an optical illusion that actually makes the neck look longer. You can also make the neck look longer by the way you trim it, and you also make the neck look longer by relaxing her, by manipulating the neck and the vertebrae so that it expands and she relaxes and is able to get the neck longer.
Yeah, very amazing. Well, that's quite a Irish setter, and certainly tribute, I think, to the handler as well.
Well, she was a great specimen of the breed.
Now, as long as we're talking about a couple tips there, I always thought it was interesting. I think I read it on your website. You had a tip about the handlers taking breath mints. I thought that was kind of cute. Tell our viewers about that.
Well, what happens is when the human being is under stress or is apprehensive, their body produces adrenaline. And dogs react unfavorably to the smell of adrenaline. That's why people who are afraid of dogs always get bitten. So I advocate somebody who is showing a dog who is nervous to take a breath mint, and then their dog that they are showing does not know that they are upset or nervous, and they will react more favorably for that person showing that dog.
That's interesting. And of course, I don't know, is that in your book?
Absolutely.
I want to show George's done a lot of things, and of course you've had a lot of years too to do a lot of these things.
Just a few years.
This is your book. It's called The Winning Edge: Show Ring Secrets by George Alston with Canine Vanacore?
No, Connie Vanacore.
Oh, with Connie Vanacore, I'm sorry.
Right.
This happens when I read on the side.
She is an author. I'm not really an author. And the way the book, that was published in 1992 by Macmillan, and then Simon & Schuster bought out Macmillan.
And wasn't it a pretty, it was one of their fastest selling books on that one publisher?
Well, this is the largest selling dog book in the history of Howell Bookhouse.
That's, again, a tribute to you.
And also, too, the fact that it's still viable this long. Normally a dog book doesn't last out on the market for more than maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. And the way the book was written is Connie Vanacore came to 6 of my seminars and tape recorded them and then put it to paper, and then we sat down and moved things around, took everything that was timely out of it. And it's not the mechanics of showing dogs, it's using sports psychology and the psychology and philosophy of showing dogs, basically. There are lots of books out there on the actual mechanics. This is the mental part of the game.
Now, I think you wrote that book after you retired.
Yes.
In the 90s, and the sport got kind of grueling. You were going legally blind, legs were given out, and didn't you say to me that you showed the last 2 years while you were legally blind?
No, I showed...
The last 2 shows?
No, I showed between 1986 and 1988, I showed legally blind.
Oh, okay.
And then I had an operation, and I now have 20/10 vision.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. That's
Yes.
good news for the show.
Well, I can still drive, you know. I can still see the golf ball go. So.
And then after you were known for your seminars all over the country at one time. You now, I guess, pretty much restrict to the East Coast because of retirement schedule or whatever.
No, it's because I'm not able to fly. When I fly, my blood pressure goes right up to the ceiling because of an ear problem that I have. But I've done seminars in Canada, Australia, no, not Australia, excuse me, Hawaii, Bermuda, and all over the United States. I've been asked to do them in China, Scotland, England, and whatever, but I just didn't want to fly that far. So.
And you've also developed software for kennels and breeders, and even I understand somebody mentioned that you developed the Ocean Pines golf billing software?
I wrote a program for Bob Beckelman when he was the pro for him to run his pro shop so he could send out his bills and whatever and keep track of his inventory and whatever.
So dog handling sort of came back and was a benefit to Ocean Pines and the golf community. Who would think?
Yes, it was. And I gave it to Bobby as a, because when he started out as pro here, he didn't have the money to go buy a program. There were some programs out there, but mine was better than theirs anyway. So.
Right. Now, I want to read just one little section here that was a statement from you, which I felt says a lot about how you work with dogs. Each dog is an individual, says Alston. You have to learn where your dog's buttons are, what motivates him. As a kid, I learned that dogs have temperaments and feelings. You have to be able to look into their eyes and tell what they want. Dog must be happy. I think some people think that there's a lot of maybe overly sternness when it comes to training dogs. You seem to have a much different approach. I think you were called the dog whisperer at one point by the American Kennel Club.
Well, there was an article in the American Kennel Club Gazette in 2004 that the title of the article was The Dog Whisperer. And it was a 4-page article on my seminars and my training procedures and whatever. And the man who is on Animal Planet now and calls himself the Dog Whisperer stole that from me. I should have patented it, but I didn't.
Yeah, so. Maybe we can get hold of him. Now, for someone that, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. For someone that, to me, it was just so amazing. You started 8 years old and stay in the same profession your whole life, it's not surprising, I guess, that your family would get involved too. And I understand your wife, Mary Ann, is one of the top dog judges in the country?
In the world.
In the world.
She's judged overseas many, many times in Canada. As we speak now, she's in Minneapolis judging some shows. Last weekend she was in Atlanta judging 4 shows. The weekend before that she was in Cleveland judging a couple of shows. So she is quite popular as a judge, and I think that's what's kept our marriage together, is because I go one way teaching a seminar, she goes another way to judge dog shows, and we meet during the week. We don't just sit there staring at one another 7 days a week. So,
now, how many children do you have in total now, you, Marianne?
We have 4.
You have 4, and some of them, or one of them, is involved in the dog handling business?
Well, my oldest daughter, Jane.
Jane, that's the one that I think was on the cover of a couple magazines. Is this Jane?
That is Jane. That's my oldest daughter. That she's shown there with a PVGV, who is the #1 hound in the United States as we speak. And she's also the one who showed a Clumber Spaniel in 1996 at Win Best in Show at Westminster Kennel Club.
That wasn't the...
up in Madison Square Garden.
That's not the one we have here.
No, that is a German Wirehair Pointer.
Uh-huh.
And when that picture was, by the way, these are national publications.
This is Dog News.
That particular animal was, at that time, was the #1 sporting dog in the United States. So she is now one of the top professional handlers
in her own right.
In the country on her own, yes.
Do you kind of remind her, though, where the expertise might have began?
I don't try to tell her anything.
She did win in Madison Square Garden, did she not?
Yes, she did, and after that point, she knew it all, so I don't try to tell her anything.
That's great.
And then I have another daughter who's a school teacher in Salisbury.
What's her name?
Her name is Jennifer.
Jennifer?
She teaches biology at Y High in Salisbury, but she shows her own dogs, pointers, and English cockers, and she shows a few dogs professionally, but she doesn't want to earn her.
You made a good point, though, in talking to me. For someone that, with your expertise, that you look at it as a family sport, and you really encourage people to get involved. They don't have to think that they're going to be at the Westminster Dog Show. It's a good family sport. They can get involved in local shows.
Well, people see these shows on TV and they think, oh, I'm not going to get involved with that. It seems too complicated. But that's just the cream of the crop. That's like the World Series in baseball. You still have Little League Baseball for kids. Your local dog shows and your local dog clubs is something that the whole family can get involved in. You get involved in obedience, you can get involved in rally, you can get involved in confirmation showing. And it's a great sport that the whole family can go and participate and create long-term friendships from people from all over the country. This is one of the few sports that a farm boy like me could sit down and have a discussion with a man who was a CEO of General Motors about dogs, because we had something in common. There's probably no other sport that you can do that except maybe horses.
That's a good point. You're right. Absolutely right. And something that, you should be proud of. As you said, from a young boy of 8 with a physical disability, rising to the top of his profession. It's truly the American dream, I think, and we really want to thank you. It's a tribute to all your hard work and efforts, and we appreciate your taking the time to come here and share with us. Like as I said before, having the top dog trainer in the country, dog handler in Ocean Pines. What a treat! Maybe someday we can get your wife here, and we can go a little bit more into the dog handling end of the situation.
Dog judging.
And dog judging. But she has to know how to do all of it, I assume, if you're judging, right?
Well, that's true. She has to know whether a professional handler is trying to hide things and is trying to pull fast ones in the ring, so she has to be able to spot that.
Could be a fascinating discussion.
One of the bad things about coming here and being on this, I've been flying under the radar since 1994 when I first moved here, so now it's all out in the open now.
So every time you go down the street, say, hey, Mr. Alston, could you give me some tips on helping to train my dog?
Absolutely.
Something I did before the show. Well, it was great. George, thank you very much for coming and sharing with our viewers a lot of your life story. We certainly commend and respect what you've done with your life and your family and all the dogs that touched you and you've touched. It's been, I think, a good ride for you from what I can tell. And I'd like to thank you again, and I certainly hope our viewers enjoyed hearing the story of George Alston. I know I did. Thank you for watching, and this is Jack Barnes for Focus on the Pines.